Coubertin, dit SKB, la valeur sûre.
Dans ces moments presque les lions sont pas la faute de la mort, devient l'esclave de la gazelle.
In the next 8 months, we're going to have a new tenant at the White House. Is it going to be the incumbent? Is it going to be a new tenant? Well, November the 3rd will tell the story. And so we're looking up to the elections that are coming up in 2020. But of course, we know that there are other elections which will be coming up before then. So polling will begin as early as March, we are told. And of course, we will be giving you all what, we'll be giving you the information as it unfolds. This is APEX1 Radio. Welcome to this segment of broadcast this Saturday, the 25th of December 2020, which will begin with another edition of 2020 race within the 9th one, of course, today. And of course, we're welcoming everyone who is joining us on the platform today. My name is Ernest Kanjo. The entire APEX1 Radio team is here. Marcel Adjid is in Varsut, Switzerland, monitoring and, of course, digitally controlling this production from that end. And the team of 2020 is stationed, and we are ready to kick off. So do not go away. 2020 race number 9, kicking off on APEX1 Radio. Piece of music there titled Kuyu by the Zulu band in Ivory Coast. Like Garages has put the time to 15 minutes to here in the studio of APEX1 Radio. We are sorry, we apologize for the late start of this edition of the show. We had some technical issues that held us down, but those issues have been resolved and we're ready to go. How are you today, Ayo?
I'm doing great, Mr. Ernest. I'm glad to be back. Like you said, we had some technical hiccups in the studio, but I'm glad we're able to put everything together. Still, time check is 45 minutes downside one. My name is Ayo Akinuli. You can call me Mike Busy Mike, whichever way you want to call me. It's all about entertainment and the speak on the radio. And of course, it's the 9th edition of 2020 race. This is the show where we lay down the platform to basically educate our listeners, especially new Americans, about the upcoming elections and what's at stake. And of course, we give the politicians, the opportunity to express their manifesto on the platform. On today's show, you don't want to miss it. Stay tuned.
You don't want to miss it. If you ignore politics will definitely be at your doorstep. There's just no way you can stay away from it. 2020 race number 9. Let's go.
Baby, give me something. What's it about your love? I didn't think I've got you. Got me wanting some more. Baby, give me sugar, I'ma go to me, Mr. Papi, hungry man. Give me something, trouble, lele. You get now, Allah. Oh, the kind of body we make my desire. Baby, your body, you be tonight, oh. Your body, you me for work like that. How much you want that? Money long Kilimanjaro. Don't need them on my nose. One day make I hear you talk, anything you give, I drop, they for under make a day. You send this, I be hungry man. So, baby, give me something. What's it about your love? I didn't think I've got you. Got me wanting some more. Baby, give me sugar, I'ma go to me.
This commentator is not too sure how voting as an exercise came about. But what could be imagined is that it came up as a solution to disputed disagreements that arrived at no conclusion. We can imagine a scenario where everyone wanted to occupy the same position, a position that could only have one person at a time. Imagine 10 people vying for that position, and everyone thinks they should be the one having it. Imagine how conflicting that would have been. We would even imagine that such disputes turned out to be very fierce in nature. God forbid. Voting might just have propped in the minds of whoever thought about it and turned out to be the best solution or way of separating the victor from the vanquished. What voting came along with is fairness, which today takes the posture of the most significant value in democracy. By fairness here, we mean everyone has the chance and equal opportunity to be voted for whatever they are positioning or postulating for. Fairness, therefore, erases color, ethnicity, social class stratification, level of education, social or socioeconomic status, and you name it. That is what it is by principle. But in reality, is that the case? I'm afraid not quite. There is a slip side of voting which is not fair to fairness. If we look at fairness in terms of the best candidate bringing home the booty. Of course, it would be fair for the best to win an election. Unfortunately, there are examples, many of course, of elections won by people who, from clear indications, do not deserve to or cannot deliver thereafter. Such victorious candidates, victorious in quotes, might have been voted for several reasons: tribal lines, religious acquaintances, professional rapport, family leanings, school or class connections, and so on. In cases where people win elections on these premises, ideology is mostly relegated to the background. A comrade, just because he has many friends, becomes the mayor, governor, member of the house, even when they cannot deliver. That too is democracy, but at what price? In similar and much more spectacular circumstances, we have seen where celebrities get into politics and easily amass votes simply because of a huge fan base they enjoy thanks to their talent. This has been the case with some movie stars, soccer heroes, musicians, and the list continues. But as easy as they have won elections and rose to top positions, they have crumbled easily as well, destroying the legacies they enjoyed in the process. That is sad. Just like any other bad elected official, these one-time heroes sooner than later get trapped in malpractices, that is corruption, misappropriation of public funds, dictatorial tendencies, laziness, delay in implementing development, and what have you. This provokes the question as to why they ever nursed the thought of getting into politics of politicians. That notwithstanding, there are instances where people have been voted by those with whom they have no affection or affectionate leanings, but because they were competent and had shown sufficient proof they could deliver. By so doing, square pegs were fitted into square holes. Such a scenario is described as advanced democracy. Democracy filled with genuineness. Democracy that takes into consideration common good. Democracy that puts the needs of the people first. After all, it is the people who call the shots. Reason why it's been described as government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So, voting the right persons is just the right thing to do. This is 2020 Race on APEX1RADIO. We'll be right back.
Yeah, hello?
Hello, Afana.
What's up?
I just did our boys, Joe. We just did also for streets now. We're going to now. Normal level.
Yeah, that will all go, yeah. Where you at?
I'm just in the studio, man, working on a new project.
Damn.
What's the album?
You need to see this, bro.
See what?
Like, you need to see this. Billa.
Is the man on the beat?
Okay, it's very true, me to confirm, but I have a couple of concerns. Kilo one, look at where was your consign. Men, not many of your kind. You already know I want to eat your bum more, and I can see it in your eyes, go to concord. The flesh on your body is what cut so. If you go lie, laugh with your popcorn. To be very honest, everything work back. Oh yeah.
This is APEX1RADIO. This is 2020 Race, the edition of the 25th of December 2020. We're broadcasting live from the city of Columbus. We are in the state of Ohio. Ayo, how are you? Welcome back.
Yes, well, like I said, I'm glad to be back. And of course, we have a couple of stakeholders in the studios. We are ready to dish out entertainment at its peak alongside infotainment at its best. So stay tuned.
Okay, stay tuned. So, first things first, Roderick Newman is right here for what has been in the papers. What have the papers been saying about the upcoming elections? Roderick, how are you today?
I'm okay, Mr. Kanjo. How about yourself?
Great. How was the week?
It was a busy week. I'm glad to be back here. This is Fel Rada be on a Saturday afternoon.
Okay,
Yeah.
I know impeachment has been in the news, but did that deter the papers from talking about the other issues of elections?
It kind of did for the most part, but before I dive into that, I must say your editorial regarding, the reason why people vote. In the last presidential election, we got this president because people vote out of party loyalty.
Okay.
So they did not directly relate to the president. They are not his family member.
Okay.
But they felt like, I belong to the Republican Party. I should probably vote for a Republican president. Now, this week in the news has been very scanty, although the New York Times stood out for me. But I looked at all the major papers, including conservative papers like the Inquirer, the conservative media, Fox News, and more. And even I tried to listen to Rush Limbaugh to try to get a diversified view as it relates to the election, but it was very scanty. Everything was skewed towards impeachment, so it's a very hot topic. But I had a good snapshot for us from the New York Times. Alexander Burns is one of their staff writer, and pretty much this writer was trying to paint a picture of Bernie Sanders being steady in the poll and even rising up. The latest national polling has Joseph Biden as the front runner at 26%. Bernie Sanders is at 23%. Elizabeth Warren slipped down a little bit, 15%. Pete Buttigieg, it's at 8% in the poll. Still consistently was at 15%. But in the last polling that came just before the Iowa votes will be cast, he skipped to 23%. That put his major competitor, Elizabeth Warren, behind him shortly. People like Mike Bloomberg, Klobuchar, Stiers, they are strong candidate when it comes to finances. This is the one thing I've taken away from looking at this week's papers. It's like you can have so much money. Buttigieg raised the most money in the last quarter, but that does not translate into support in the polls. So there's going to be new polling that is going to be coming up this week. I'm very fascinated in looking at those and see how the dynamics change. All the major broadcast network, beside the papers, MSNBC, ABC, CNN, Fox News, and all the conversation is turned towards impeachment, which when it comes to impeachment, the latest is the Democrats are pushing to have more witnesses in the trial in the Senate, and the Republicans are saying that you guys had all the time in the House. Why did you not get these people to come in as witnesses? And it's kind of a slippery slope. Nancy Pelosi is a person that plays a very political game. They can agree, they can make an agreement and say Republicans will produce, or the White House will produce Mick Mulvaney and John Bolton, and the Democrats should produce Joe Biden and his son. Fair game. Okay. But the White House can turn around and evoke executive privilege, so throw people under the bus. Nancy Pelosi is very wise, although it's kind of out of her hands, but the impeachment managers, in a way, respond directly to her. So Chuck Schumer is kind of a figure just there for the sake of it, but Nancy Pelosi calls the shot, and she's not buying in yet into, let's get tit for tat. You produce two people, I produce two people, because the White House can turn around and say, my two people are not going to say anything. They're not going to do anything. And then Joe Biden and the son, Hunter, are going to be put forward to be able to, kind of make them look at like the people that are corrupt. And that is the origin of this impeachment was the president was withholding aid from Ukraine because they wanted to investigate corruption. Okay. And it so coincided that the person they were investigating is a potential competitor for the president in the election. So that's what the major news network this week are talking about when it comes to elections. It's kind of interwoven. It was not strict election news that I will conventionally give on this radio. It's kind of intertwined with impeachment because a major candidate, it's part of the concern in the Senate as when it comes to impeachment. So it's skewed towards that direction this week.
That major candidate is not bothered. He doesn't seem to be bothered about anything. And does that mean it is just clear that he will be out of this safe?
Politics is a very dirty game. They want to smear you as much as they can. There are a couple of questions that has been unanswered. Why was your son on the board of this Ukrainian energy company when he has zero experience when it comes to energy? That's a genuine question. I, as a citizen, want to ask. He was making, $82,000 every month. What experience qualify him? Now, when Joe Biden was vice president, he made sure that a prosecutor in the Ukraine was fired. The Republicans are trying to link this like, oh, he was fired because he was tough on your son. He was tough on the company where your son worked for. And Joe Biden is trying to say that, no, the American government gives money to foreign companies or to foreign countries, but they have to meet certain standards. So I did not get this prosecutor fired because my son was benefiting from it. It was just because he did not meet standard. But to the rescue of Joe Biden, they went through legal proceedings. They went to Congress and say, hey, we're going to not give this money to the Ukraine until they do this. They didn't do it behind the door. They did not call somebody and say, hey, you've got to stop this now. So there's kind of a difference in approach and legality. But the Obama administration, was full of competent lawyers, so they did it the correct way. They went to Congress and said, we are not giving this money to the Ukraine because this prosecutor is corrupt. Well, the Trump government called the president and said, you've got to make an announcement that you're investigating this guy public. So this is where we are at when it comes to election news and impeachment this week.
This is where we are when it comes to elections news and impeachment this week. Ayo?
I have no questions for now. Maybe when he comes back.
Okay. Roderick will be back for part 2 of his Lords. This is 2020 Race on APEX1 Radio. We're broadcasting live from the United States of America. If you're just joining us, welcome on board. We have 3 candidates who will be presenting themselves and, of course, what they are going in for. In this edition of The Shurim Subai is a civil rights attorney, and she's running for the Ohio Senate District 2. Then we have Albert, who will be reaching us live from Atlanta in Georgia, and he's running for the U.S. Senate, U.S. Senate. Then we have Eric Kennelly, who is our studio guest. He's right here with us in the studio. He is running for the Ohio Senate District 16. So before he comes on the airways, let's have a break with music. Then we will be right back.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. They call me DJ Spino. Right about now, ladies, fellas, Dutchman.
Orí ló bá mi ṣe, àwọn owó ṣe ń wọlé, mo máa lówó lọ́mọdé, adẹ̀tún ní lágbà, àwọn ọlọ́pẹ́ tún wọlé, ẹ̀jẹ̀ kan ṣọ́ọ̀tì wọlé, mo máa ṣayé fọ́mọdé, adẹ̀tún ṣe fàgbà. Súnmọ́ mi Mona Lisa ọmọge, ayé làbí dálùkà ló máa jẹ. Èmi dẹ̀ ti ná dọ́là fọ́mọge. Ṣọmọ DJ spin náà lọmọ yẹn. Súnmọ́ mi Mona Lisa ọmọge. Ayé làbí dálùkà ló máa jẹ. Èmi dẹ̀ ti ná dọ́là fọ́mọge. Ṣọmọ DJ spin náà lọmọ yẹn. Sexy lady no dey dull on me. Tó bá lè jókòó ṣá máa rédíò, yeah. Pretty lady bá mi jó jẹ́ kí n náwó sẹ́. Tó bá lè jókòó ṣá máa rédíò, yeah. Ló bá mi ṣe, àwọn owó ṣe ń wọlé, mo máa lówó lọ́mọdé, adẹ̀tún ní lágbà, àwọn ọlọ́pẹ́ tún wọlé, ẹ̀jẹ̀ kan ṣọ́ọ̀tì wọlé, mo máa ṣayé fọ́mọdé, adẹ̀tún ṣe fàgbà. Súnmọ́ mi Mona Lisa ọmọge, ayé làbí dálùkà ló máa jẹ. Èmi dẹ̀ ti ná dọ́là fọ́mọge. Ṣọmọ DJ spin náà lọmọ yẹn tẹ́gbà. Súnmọ́ mi Mona Lisa ọmọge. Ayé làbí dálùkà ló máa jẹ. Èmi dẹ̀ ti ná dọ́là fọ́mọge. Ṣọmọ DJ spin náà lọmọ yẹn tẹ́gbà. Ọmọ ti gbàgbé ìṣe. ó dá kéréje borí ọ̀mùtí gbàgbé iṣẹ́ ó dá kéréje borí ọ̀mùtí gbàgbé iṣẹ́ ó dá kéréje borí ọ̀mùtí gbàgbé iṣẹ́ ó dá kéréje borí
Thank you for coming out tonight. They call me DJ Spinall. Get
You need to see this, bro. See what? Like, you need to see this. Billa.
It's Jermaine on the beat.
Okay. It's very true, me to confirm, but I have a couple of concerns. Kilo one, look at where was your consignment. Not many of your kind. You already know I want to eat your combo, and I can see it in your eyes, me to conquer. The flesh on your body is what cut off. If me go lie, laugh with you no popcorn. To be very honest, anything work back. Oh yeah, show my jet to she can fat. Mo build anything, get your cap. I'm on you to kaka. Customer than me. You want to see? You know how it be. Rubbish in on me. Customer than alaga like to the fire. I got it on money, I got it so make you allow me to do my party. Wrap up, money, alaga like to the. Wrap up, money, alaga like to the fire. Look at your statistics, why you pop gone? I will wash you with only cancan. Oh, yeah, separate, say, hello, toto. Oh, let out to why you control.
This is APEX1RADIO. This is 2020 Raised, the edition of the 25th of January 2020. We're broadcasting live from the city of Columbus. We have 3 guests lined up on the show today. They are all vying for office. We're going to begin with Rim Subey, who is a candidate running for the U.S. Senate District 2 in Ohio, and she will have time with us to present her manifesto, and of course what she intends to do when she comes to office. Without much ado, at exactly 8 minutes past 2, let's go over to our first candidate. Rim, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the show,
Hi.
Rim.
Thank you.
How are you today?
I'm doing fabulous. I just got done.
Okay. From what part of Ohio are you speaking?
I live in Perrysburg, Ohio, and I'm currently at the Wood County Democratic Party headquarters in Bowling Green.
All right. Also, we're told that you are a candidate vying for the position of U.S. Senate, Ohio District 2. Am I correct?
So I'm running for the state Senate, not the U.S. Senate, and it is District 2. You are correct.
Okay.
Correct. All right. Thank you so much for being part of the show. I want you to use this opportunity to actually introduce yourself to the public. You know yourself more than anybody else. So please introduce yourself to the public.
Your voice is breaking a little bit.
Okay, I was just letting you know that I would give you the honor to introduce yourself to the listeners out there. You know yourself more than I do, so I want to give you the privilege to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yeah, I still can't hear you, but I think you're asking me how I feel about running for the
No.
Ohio
Introduce.
Senate.
Right, so he wants you to reintroduce yourself for the sake of people who are coming
Of
across for
course.
the first time. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm a civil rights attorney. I work at a legal aid firm.
Mm-hmm.
And my job is to wake up every day and advocate for the rights of working families. And I have chosen to dedicate all of my life at work and off work to advocating for working families.
Okay, that's interesting. So, tell us how you got into politics briefly.
My interest in politics started a long time ago when I first developed an interest in being a lawyer and an advocate for people. I remember I was a teenager when one of my mother's friends was visiting and was telling my mother about how her husband at the time was abusive towards her and her child. And as I sat in the next room overhearing their conversation, I heard her tell my prosecutor failed to do anything about her abusive husband. He did not press charges. So I knew that I wanted to grow up and be an advocate for women like her and children. And I went to law school and I started my legal practice career and advocated for families and children caught up in the opioid crisis and assisted women who were in the midst of domestic violence and children who were being separated from their parents. And then one day someone asked me if I would consider running for office. So I went home and I did my research about my opponents in the state house. And I realized that I had to do something. I realized that I had to stand up for families and children and protect women's rights to access health care and protect people from losing their health care benefits. So I put my hat in the ring and started developing this grassroots movement to bring about the right change for Ohioans.
That's interesting.
All right, that's very, very impressive. I was looking at your profile, your biography. You actually grew up outside America. I'll call you a minority. You belong to the minority group. You know, you're Muslim, you're a woman, and this is kind of rare. You know, as of right now, you know, when it comes to like Muslim women, and young women like you involved in politics, active politics. You know, not just movements, campaigns, or any other thing. So, how do you plan if you eventually get elected? How do you plan to use your office to encourage your constituency, especially people that has the same, background like you are, like I said, as a minority woman? How do you plan to use your office to encourage, minority women and people in the minority to, actively participate in, politics, especially in the U.S.?
I believe in the value of democracy. And I believe that every vote counts. And even though there's been a lot of gerrymandering happening in my district and happening in the state of Ohio, to devalue people's votes, which is actually one of the issues that I want to work on when elected to the Senate, to ensure that we have a fair representation of people's votes. But I believe in the value of democracy and bringing a diverse group of people to the table. Diversity can manifest itself in a variety of ways: race, religion, gender, orientation, gender expression, and ideas and age and life background. All of these means of diversity bring better decision making to the table, because research shows that merely interacting with someone who has ideas different from our own forces us to come up with better and more innovative ideas. So I intend to always advocate and continue my advocacy for bringing all people to the table and ensuring that we hear the voices of everyone. Everyone who is part of our community should be able to come to the table and talk about the differences and the changes that they want to see happen to make this state and this nation and the whole world a better place for all of us. I strongly believe that we all do better when we all do better. And one person's suffering is the suffering of the entire community.
All right. Thank you so much. So, if elected, how do you plan to sponsor or co-sponsor some public policy that's going to address the police misconduct in our society, especially in Central Ohio. In 5 years alone, the state has paid out $1.87 billion, in settlements. How do you plan to curb this and control? I see this as a waste of funds. Those funds can be divided to somewhere else and, could make some better impact. So how do you plan to curb that?
I'm not sure what exactly you were referring to. I heard $1.7 billion, but what is it?
So I was talking. I don't know if I have a problem with my microphone, but my question was, if elected, into the House, or into the Ohio Senate, how do you plan to address the police misconduct, occurrences that's been going on in the society, like police brutality, especially against minority. This is, this is out there. This is something that's out there and people know about it. So, and of course, the states had paid out $1.87 billion, in settlements, when it comes to this, occurrences with police and, public citizens, So how do you plan to curb this? How do you plan to make sure that the police and the general public, especially your constituency, because like I said, I emphasize that you are from the minority, the minority group. So how do you plan to improve a better relationship between the police and your constituency when you become a representative of your people?
I'm really sorry. I still don't understand what issue you're asking about. The voice is breaking.
So he's trying to find out how you plan to negotiate a way out between the relationship of between the police and the people in your constituency. Okay, so you're asking how to negotiate problems between the police and the people?
Yes, just to build. We're trying to build a relationship where there's this confidence between the public and law enforcement agencies, so we can have a better and a safer community. So how do you plan to promote that,
Okay. So the voice is breaking, but I'm going to answer what I think I heard. I think the question is about policing. We do have an over-policing in this nation, and we have an over-incarceration of people. We have to make sure that we are reforming our prison system. We need to reform our justice system. And we have to make sure that people who have mental health issues are not being incarcerated, and that people's rights to free speech and protests are being protected. Currently, as a community organizer and an advocate, these are issues that I work on, and I definitely intend to take that with me to the State House to ensure that we are reforming our systems in such a way that does not cause harm to anyone. I mean, people who, if you give me just 1 second, I actually was just reading about this. 15 to 20% of individuals currently incarcerated struggle with serious mental health issues. So we have to make sure that we're not arresting and detaining people who need mental health treatment. We have to make sure that everyone is well served so that they can re-enter into the population, and so that when they are released, there are safety mechanisms to ensure that they re-enter the system and have stable housing and have access to a living wage income, so that they can also be part of developing our economy and our community.
Rim Sumbe is her name. She is a civil rights attorney and running for Ohio Senate District 2. She's one of our guests in today's edition of 2020 Race Rating You Live from Columbus in Ohio. We're broadcasting from the United States of America. 20 minutes past 2 here in the studio. And of course, the show continues. Rim, you're going to take a very short break time for us to do some music from this end. When we come back, we will be having you for the final segments of our conversation.
Thank you.
Whether you originate from the north, south, west, or east, there is one thing that affects you directly. It is called politics. You may not like it, you may want to ignore it, you may think you are staying away from it. But wherever you go, politics looks at you directly in the face. 2020 race educates you on your civic rights and responsibilities as a citizen of the United States of America. 2020 race provides you with the freshest information on the upcoming election. 2020 race is a radio show that brings candidates, voters, election experts, and journalists on the same platform to discuss issues pertaining to the electoral process. 2020 race is a news, interviews, analysis, and announcements. 2020 race is every Saturday, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. 2020 race only on APEX1 Radio. Join us, be informed, and learn.
Yeah, hello?
Hello, how far now?
What's up?
I just be on point, Joe. Just be also for streets. Now, we're going to go now. Normal level.
Yeah, let me all go, yeah. Where you at?
I'm just in the studio, man, working on a new project.
Damn.
What's happening?
You need to see this, bro.
See what?
Like, you need to see this. Build up.
It's Jermaine on the beat.
Okay, it's very true, me to confirm, but I have a couple of concerns. Kilo one, look at where was your consignment. Not many of your kind. You already know I want to eat your combo, and I can see it in your eyes, me to conquer. The flesh on your body is what cut for. If me go lie, laugh with you, lock up.
This is 2020 Race on APEX1 Radio. We're doing the 9th edition of the show. Our next guest will be Eric Connolly. He's already here in the studio of APEX1 Radio. He's running for the Ohio Senate District 16. But before Eric comes on the platform, we're back with Reem Subai, who now joins us once again from Toledo here in Ohio. Welcome back, Reem.
Thank you.
Right, so before we continue this conversation, I would like you to quickly and briefly describe Ohio District 2 for our listeners. So where do you cover, and what is it about this district which you think is that stands out, as a matter of fact?
The district is very much on the lake. And it's really important to me and to all people in my district to protect our freshwater reserve, to ensure that our lake is not being poisoned by factory farms, and that our people and our residents and our community and our farmers have enough water for them to grow crops and to drink and to grow food and to live off of for many years to come. Mm-hmm. The district covers Ottawa County, Erie County, Wood County, and large parts of Lucas and smaller parts of Fulton.
All right, great. Let me ask you, what makes you actually different from other politicians? What makes you spectacular, from other politicians vying for the same political office?
So I live in Perrysburg, and I work at a legal aid firm, as I said earlier, serving 32 counties in Ohio. So my career involves serving working families. And earlier this week, I was with a parent and a child, representing them to ensure that the child had the best quality of education available to them and the best services available to them.
All right, great.
I have all of the voices of this.
Great.
Okay, go right ahead.
So I was saying, the great community that we have in Perrysburg and in Wood County and in entire Senate District 2 requires representation. We have to put people in office who are not going to be bought out by corporate PACs And that's exactly what I am not doing. I have not received a single dollar from corporate PACs, and I will not receive money from corporate PACs because I'm invested in bringing the voice of the people to the State House. I've always been invested in the community and bringing power back to the people. That's exactly what I've done, and that's exactly what I will continue to do.
All right, great. Thank you so much. So one of the things that always mad most elections that we had in the country is low voters turnout. So what are your plans to make sure that people turn out en masse, not just to vote for you, but people turn out en masse, your constituents to turn out en masse to vote this particular election? It is very, very important.
Yeah. People want to vote for someone who they can trust. People want to vote for someone who's out there knocking doors despite the 35 degrees weather. And people want to vote for someone who is invested in them, not invested in becoming a career politician. So I believe that people have been coming out and will continue to come out in my support, and will continue to see the truth and the reliability of my investment in the people's voices and in amplifying the voices of marginalized groups, of people of color, of people with disabilities, of women, and ensuring that everyone is heard.
All right, great. You plan to represent Franklin County District 2? And this basically falls...
I don't have Franklin County.
Oh, no. What?
Ohio District 2.
Ohio District 2. I apologize for that.
Yeah.
And when I looked at that district, one of those problems that district is facing is a good education system. And how do you plan to solve this problem? How do you plan to put up a system or introduce some kind of laws that would enable a better education system for the youth, especially for your constituency?
Yeah, I'm an education attorney, so that's one of the main areas of law that I practice in, and I see the daily impact that our unconstitutional funding formula has on our children. Education is a fundamental right, and it's the most important tool for children to grow up with a good education system so that they can prosper and accomplish all of the dreams and aspirations that they have. The Ohio Constitution is titled Rights of Education, the rights of conscience, education, and the necessity of religion and knowledge. That's all in the Ohio Constitution, Section 7. And I want to make sure that we are not investing our public funds to fund for-profit schools. Public funds should be used to fund public schools. And the State House should invest the money that it's taking from the local districts back into the local districts.
All right,
for example, in my city of Perrysburg, we just had to pass a levy because of a cap on our ability to receive funding. So we've had so many students move into the district that have not been able to keep up with the cost. And Bowling Green is also looking at a levy. So we have to make sure that the state is investing in our children's education, providing them with the toolkit to grow up and become strong and highly accomplished members of our community.
All right, thank you so much. We're actually running out of time. This is going to be my last questions. I want you to dish out information, more information about, your candidacy, your activities. I don't know if you're going to be having some campaign activities, some fundraising, some lectures. Your website, your social media handles, because I want people to be able to check you out and, see what's going on with you.
Thank you. So we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Look for us and find us on Facebook. It's Ream for Ohio. Same thing for Twitter handle. It's Ream for Ohio. And our Instagram handle is also Ream for Ohio. We have an Axel account. We have a reporting deadline coming up at the end of the month. So I invite everyone to go on our website and make a contribution. Even if it's $5, that goes a long way for us to be able to spread our message of bringing justice and equality to everyone in Ohio.
Justice and equality for everyone in Ohio. Her last words there. Reem Sobey is her name. She's running for Ohio Senate District 2. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. Hopefully, we will get you back on it in the course of time.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the work you do to amplify voices of all people.
Have a fantastic rest of the weekend. And so this is APEX1 Radio. We're broadcasting from the United States of America. You are listening to 2020 Race. It is a radio stage for the 2020 elections in the United States of America. Our next guest will be yours shortly. So do next to the primaries for the Ohio Senate. We have a candidate who will be on stage for this exercise, for this competition, and he's right here with us in the studio. We don't know how fast or how slow his heart beats as March 17 approaches, but then Eric Connolly will be telling us when he joins us on the platform. He is our next guest on the show, and without much ado, let's say welcome to our next guest. Eric, how are you today?
Great, how about you?
I'm good.
Thanks for having me.
Beautiful. You're welcome to APEX1 Radio.
Thank you so much.
So how was the week? Good week so far?
So far, so good. Kind of
Okay.
busy. Every day is different. When you're running a campaign and you wake up in the morning, you really don't know what the day's got in front of you. So you just got to be adaptable and flexible and ready to work hard every day.
Tell me, how do you, I don't know if you've run for office before, but how do you usually feel in an election year?
How do I what?
How do you usually feel in an election year? Anxious?
It goes up and down. So sometimes I feel very anxious, and sometimes I feel like I'm ready to go and I'm more confident than I've ever been in my life. So it really depends on, like I said, the day. You've got things that you do every day, so there are parts to it that are routine. Thank you so much. But then there are other parts to it that you might get a phone call and get invited to an event the next day. And, as long as your schedule works, you say yes. That's what I've learned in my life as well as in this campaign is when opportunities present themselves, it's better to say yes and participate. You regret the things that you don't do more than you regret the things that you do in life.
You regret the things you don't do more than you regret the ones you do more. Okay, Eric,
I was actually going to ask him real quick. You said some days are good, some days are bad. When it's bad, what's your source of inspiration? What actually propels you to say, you know what, I can't give up, got to keep doing this?
It's the people who I speak with every day who connect with what I'm speaking about. So when I was knocking on doors to get onto the ballot, the way it works is to get onto the ballot as a candidate for the party, you've got to submit at least 50 valid signatures. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're out in the community and you're knocking on doors, you'll knock on one door and someone will answer and you'll have a fantastic conversation, and that'll give you energy for the next 2 hours because you're going to need it, because oftentimes people aren't answering their doors, unfortunately, and then that's when the struggle comes in, just trying to get that connection. But when you do, and you have a conversation like we're having right now, and you get to speak about the issues and learn about the issues that our constituents are living every day and what they care about, that's what gives me the inspiration.
Well, just to lay the foundation for this discussion, we'd like you to reintroduce yourself and tell our listeners how you got into politics in the first place.
Thank you so much. So my name is Eric Connolly, and I'm a candidate on the Democratic side for State Senate District 16. The primary election is happening on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. So I love your shirt today, by the way. It works perfectly. I'm hoping everybody is able to get out on St. Patrick's Day and vote. So I am from Grove City, Ohio, which is in the southwestern area of District 16. I grew up there. I am a Fulbright scholar, and I am a 3-time graduate of The Ohio State University. I graduated with a Master of Public Administration degree, as well as a Master of Arts in Slavic and East European Studies. And then earlier, I graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Globalization Studies and Russian language.
Wow.
So when I'm not campaigning in the mornings, I teach nearby here, your offices at Columbus North International High School.
Okay.
I teach Russian language and culture for Ohio State and Columbus City schools. And then I've taken a leave of absence because I'm putting myself in the race. But when I'm not campaigning, I work in the State House as a legislative aide for State Senator Tina Maharath. Wow. She represents Eastern Franklin County, the 3rd Senate District.
Looking at your profile, you look more like an educationalist, someone who should just stay in the classroom and educate than a politician. So what is inspiring this new political ambition?
Yeah, well, it's been a variety of motivations for me why I want to get into the race. My motivation stems from my years in high school. So I attended Southwestern City Schools. It's a public school district in Grove City. And I had a fantastic experience growing up within public schools. But during high school, I actually attended what is known as the Ohio Distance and Electronic Learning Academy, Odella, for 2 years, which is basically an online charter school. And for a variety of reasons, we made that choice at that time. And it was a difficult choice for me and for my family. And if I could go back, I probably would not have done it the same way. In those 2 years, I never met a teacher or spoke with a guidance counselor the entire time. I remember being sent textbooks and being mailed a laptop, but it was completely up to me whether I did the work and completed my assignments and studied. And, when we made that change, we thought it was going to be for the best, but ultimately I think I lost a sense of community that our schools provide our students. And for the past 25 years, charter schools got introduced in the late 1990s in Ohio. In 2015, Ohio was labeled the wild, wild west of charter schools for the way that we allow charter schools to operate. Everyone understands what happened with ECOT in the past few years. And more recently, Odella was graded an F on our school report cards. So school report cards are another topic. But despite that fact, they were nearly eligible to receive millions of dollars from state taxpayer money simply because their parent company had another school in another state that had done decently well in that area, and then so a loophole would have allowed them to receive money here. That's been fixed, but nonetheless, I care about public education. They provide community. They prepare our students academically, and they're open to everybody, no matter where you come from, no matter how much money you have, no matter where you live. You have a chance to succeed in Ohio, into Galloway, Urban Crest, Hilliard, Dublin, and it kind of swings over into Worthington and Upper Arlington as well. So we cover a kind of a wide number of suburbs around Central Ohio.
All right, cool. So when you talking about the suburbs, when you look at Columbus, you talked about public education the other time. The scores, when you look at the rating, statistically, Columbus, Franklin County is not doing well. So what are your planned as an educationalist to make sure this narrative changes? We need to introduce some holistic changes. So what are your plans to introduce something that's going to be holistic and it's going to it's going to be fundamental? We need some fundamental changes.
Well, we need a good quality public education system, and we have fantastic public schools in Ohio and in Senate District 16. And I think the narrative that our schools are not doing well is a false narrative, and this touches on the issue of the school report cards. In my view, the school report cards more accurately measure the demographics of the students who make up our schools than it does the performance of our teachers. Our teachers are doing hard work every single day, educating our kids, serving as first responders for our kids, guiding our kids, providing mentorship for our students. And more often than not, they're working with students that come from difficult backgrounds. And we need to take that into account if we're going to be assessing the performance of our schools and our teachers. So I think we need to do some rethinking of how we assess the performance of our schools. Our school report cards are complicated. They have a lot of different things going into them. They can be difficult to understand, but at the same time overly simplistic and entirely judgmental of our teachers, when in fact our teachers are doing a fantastic job. We just need to do a better job of supporting them and presenting how different ways we could assess school and school district performance.
All right, apart from education, something that's so important to me is the immigrant community. That's my number one constituency. The Franklin County, it's they call it, I'm trying to use the word right now. It's the very lenient to immigrants. It's called
welcoming.
No, I'm trying to use a word right now, but I'm going to remember the word. So what are your plans to make sure that immigrants under your constituency can immigrate into the society and integrate and actually contribute, into the society? What are your plans to make sure that continues to happen?
Well, it needs to happen. In Columbus, I believe, Columbus is home to the second largest Somali population in the United States. So we've got a huge immigrant population. We have people from all over the world in various communities around Central Ohio. And so we need to have those communal connections. I believe it's important to connect populations to the State House. So I've worked in the State House for the previous year, as I mentioned, and one of my favorite aspects of that is working with constituents and helping them to connect with state government. Okay. Now, we have various commissions which represent certain populations. We have the Latino Affairs Commission, and they do a lot of outreach work. We need more work like that being done for a variety of populations throughout Central Ohio and throughout the state. So I think supporting commissions to do the work that they do, doing what we can to connect immigrant communities to state government so they can get the guidance in working with the various issues that either they're involved in or interested in. And that would be my primary concern, is how do we help to educate and connect communities with those who represent them. I think that's very important.
All right, the right word I was going to use the other time is sanctuary city. Okay. Columbus is a sanctuary city. Let's go straight up to security. What are your plans to, encourage better relationship between the law enforcement agencies and the people that live in your constituency, especially the minority? When you look at the statistics, when you look at records, the police and the minority do not have a good rapport, in some communities, and I'm sure it's the same in probably some parts of your community. So what are your plans to make sure that you bridge that gap between the community and the police first, so we can actually can produce a better and a safer, community, for our people?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a lot of respect for our law enforcement. So I have a family member who works as a police officer for Columbus Police District, and so I've heard a lot of stories, and I know first, kind of secondhand actually, about how difficult the working environment can be for police officers, and how much distrust there can be amongst our constituents too. If we're not having this dialogue and constant communication between law enforcement and our residents, then obviously trust is going to break down. So I think key to building trust is building communication. Things like speak with a cop day. Oftentimes our various police districts will host a come meet a cop event at a local coffee shop, and I think those are fantastic opportunities for our residents to connect with our police officers. Equally, I think it's important that our police force is made up of individuals from the community that they serve too. It's very important for a police officer, if they come into a neighborhood, to be from that neighborhood, because if the residents know that person, obviously they have more trust for the officer. Okay. So I think there are a variety of ways that we can build trust and connection between the police force and our residents. But our law enforcement officers are doing a fantastic job, and I have all the respect in the world for them.
Okay, so we're speaking with Eric Connolly. He is a candidate running for the Ohio Senate District 16. Now, Eric, it's true that issues and ideologies are important in elections, but the show is run by people. And so I'll come back to the candidate. Now, is there something you've done for your constituency, even when not as an elected officer, which makes you think that they can rely on it to have confidence in you if they need to vote for you?
Well, yes, and I think it's connected to the issues that I speak about, because the issues I care about are the issues that I and my family live every day. One of my priorities going into office would be to emphasize the need to invest in early childhood education. So for 2 years during college, I worked for the before and after school program within Hilliard City Schools at an elementary school in Hilliard. And it was a fantastic experience, and these programs are extremely important because they provide a sense of stability and guidance for our students. My wife has worked as an early childhood educator for nearly a decade. She still does to this day. The average early childhood educator earns approximately $9.86 an hour. $9.86 an hour. And these programs are crucial to our families. They support working families. They allow working families to hold on to jobs, to build savings, to send their kids to quality educational experiences. They set our kids up for a lifetime of success. But for some reason, this topic has not gotten the attention that it needs, both on the campaign side and then on the official side. The investment that we put into early childhood within the realm of education in general is minuscule. And we need to make a renewed effort to invest in early childhood education, I believe. So when I'm speaking about issues such as education or early childhood education, I'm not speaking about it from an outside perspective. I used to work as an environmental educator for 4 years. Okay. I worked for Hilliard City Schools as a before and after school staff person. I teach Russian language and culture at Columbus North International High School. I've been in and around education for a long time, and my wife has as well. We live these issues every day. They're personal to me, and so I'm not in this just to think policy and throw words at people. I'm living the issues that I'm speaking about.
All right, still time check is 47 minutes downside 2, and we are still on to the show, 2020 race, and of course we are with Eric Connell. I want to ask you this question. What makes your candidacy spectacular? What makes you different from other politicians? So why should people vote for you?
Well, I think I'm different from others in the race because I've got a mix of lived experience, as I just spoke about, in education, early childhood education, but I also have the experience on the legislative side. So for the past year, I've worked as a legislative aide in the Ohio Senate. Part of that role has been to connect constituents with state government. That's something that I'm passionate about. I've seen the effect that state government can have on individuals when it works right, when it connects with people. So I'm passionate about that, and I can bring that experience into office. Likewise, I've worked on policies that are beneficial for constituents, and I've had to work both within the Democratic side and across the aisle on policy. Good. So I bring a level of legislative experience to the race, as well as lived experience in education and in early childhood education. These are issues that we work on every day in the State House, so I think I can bring both.
So you are currently your legislative aide to Senate
State Senator.
So I'm pretty sure you've had that opportunity to be exposed to a lot of political scenarios that an average man doesn't have the opportunity. So would you say that experiences would actually propel and enable you perform actually better? Is that something you're trying to...
Yes, that's my main point, is that I believe I can be more effective in this role, given that I've had the experience working there every day, full-time, actively, working for the constituents, working on behalf of State Senator Maharath in developing policy, learning the ins and outs of how the Senate operates, of the legislative process. That's important. I think we can do more in not only connecting constituents with the process, but educating about the process, how it works. When we educate people about how the process works, we empower them to get involved. I've seen how much influence a constituent can have in the legislative process in developing a policy or proposing a bill. We can make real change as voters and as constituents in state government. We just need to be involved, and we need to be a little more educated of how the process works. And I think I could be effective in doing
that. 2 more questions before I let you go. I want to talk about bipartisanship. People want a representative that were able to reach out to the other party and actually be able to come together and actually make laws that would impact people's life positively. What are your plans to, actually do that, to be able to reach out to the other, to the other side of the aisle and actually work with them? Because we're not going to just write them off totally. They got some brilliant ideas, and it's the ability of both parties to be able to work amicably. That's what produces good governance. So, what are your plans to actually enable that, to promote good bipartisanship and the next assembly that you're going to be part of? What are your plans?
Well, actually, my experience in the State House has been that both parties have done a pretty good job of working together on important legislation. There are certain issues where that is not the case, but by and large, I've been actually rather impressed by the number of bills that I've seen that have been bipartisan. So I think we have a good foundation in terms of coming into a new General Assembly and working across the aisle. I don't think that it would be overly difficult. I've found that most senators are welcoming to to individuals on both sides of the aisle. So I've just had a fantastic experience in that way.
Great. Your contacts. So I want you to drop your contacts, your political activities in the next few weeks, next few months, your campaigns, your fundraising, everything. You know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you so much. So I am on Facebook and Twitter. On Facebook, look up Connolly for Ohio. So 2 N's, 2 L's, CONNELLY for Ohio. The website is up. It's ConnollyForOhio.com. Again, CONNELLY for Ohio.com. The primary is on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. Okay, big day, less than 2 months away. It's exciting. I'm super revved up, but I'm knocking on doors every day to try to bring out as many people as I can to the polls. If you're interested in volunteering, if you're interested in donating, go to the website, ConnollyForOhio.com, and any support that you can give at any level really means the world to me. So thank you so much.
Eric Connolly is his name. He's running for the Ohio Senate District 16, and he's one of our guests in today's edition of the show. Eric, I want to thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And hopefully we'll have you back on this platform even before the elections kick off.
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic rest of the weekend.
All right, let's play some music, Mr. Ennis.
Definitely, we need some music. And if you're just telling us, this is 2020 Race on APEX1 Radio. We come here every Saturday, we set the stage, and we talk election politics. All right, music, and we will be right back. If you're just joining us, welcome to this edition of the show. We will be back, and when we do that, Rodrick Numia will be telling us about primaries, just what a primary is all about, who can be candidate at the primaries, and how do candidates get endorsed by their political movements for every election. All right, we'll be right back with you. Do not go away. Still to come, more interesting stuff. Just on 2020 Race.
J'avais la foi et la détermination. Yahweh m'a montré la voie. You give a choose. Denis soudé pour passer casser réussi. C'est un choix, brother.
Give me
And still to come, we move over to Atlanta, Georgia, where we meet Albert Battle Albert, who is running for the U.S. Senate to represent the state of Georgia. He is our next and last guest in today's edition of 2020 Race Reaching You Live from APEX1 Radio. It's exactly 3 minutes to 3 here in the studio. And of course, time for us to continue with music. Then Roderick Numia will be joining the platform shortly. Do not go away. That piece of music there titled UT. Okay, it's exactly 2 minutes to 2 here in the studio of APEX1 Radio. If you're just joining us, welcome to this show that sets the stage for the 2020 election in the United States of America. In fact, elections, because we will have them at various levels: Congress, Senate, and of course the White House. And so, who becomes the next tenant at the White House in Washington, D.C.? It's a question which we can answer today. That question will be answered on the 3rd of November this year, when Americans will go to the polls to vote who their next president would be. And also, the ones in the various states will be voting their local representatives, some of whom we've been having on 2020 Race just on APEX1 Radio. Welcome back, Roderick.
Thank you, Mr. Kanjo.
Beautiful. And so today we're going to educate ourselves on something which I found really interesting yet intriguing.
Yes.
We're talking about candidacies, yes, and of course primaries. So first question is this: must one belong to a political party to be a candidate for an election?
It's a straightforward answer: no. You can run as an independent.
Okay.
You don't have to belong to any political
party. Do you
need
millions of signatures to run as an independent candidate?
Yes, not a million, but you need 50,000 signatures to run as an independent.
For all the elections?
For presidential election at the state level. So what was very fascinating to me when I was doing this research was that very few things are controlled in terms of election in the federal level. Mm-hmm. Most of it is done statewide. You know, like the Secretary of State is the one in charge of putting papers together and stuff like that.
Okay.
So at the state level, you need to produce 50,000 signatures to be able to be considered as an independent candidate that does not belong to any political party, and then you can run. So you don't have to belong.
Is that something easy to come by?
Now, when you are a community, when you are somebody that is out there in the community, you know, you do things for the community. You don't just get up in the morning and jump in, right? So be this surgeon that has performed good surgeries. It's well known across the state. That's not a big thing. Or you be this college professor that has impacted knowledge to your students. You know, certain things. Be this community leader who gets up in the morning and organizes events in the community to keep kids off the streets, to do so. You are just going to be known that way. Now, that's not meant for random people. You cannot just randomly get those. Yeah, you have to be a community leader. You have to be somebody that's out there to be able to go run as an independent, to be able to get those signatures
you
that
have to be a community leader. It's not randomly gotten.
Yeah.
Ayo.
All right, I was just actually going to ask. So basically, who actually wins the primaries? Is it the smartest candidate? Is it the most brilliant candidate? Is it the most popular candidate? Is it the richest candidate? What actually, propels that candidates, the candidates to actually clinch that ticket? What is it?
It is the most charismatic candidate. Okay. Case in point, Barack Obama. Case in point, Donald Trump.
When you look at but when you look at Hillary Clinton,
yeah,
and you compare Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, and you compare Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah. In those three, Warren stands out in terms of
but she never actually won the ticket. So.
Well, she's in it right now. The primary process starts, as Eric was saying, it starts March 17, which is going to be actually the Democratic presidential primary process in the state of Ohio, March 17. So it's a combination of all the things you listed, but what usually stands out, because somebody, Mike Bloomberg, has so much money, it's not doing well, okay? Joe Biden has been in the political wire of this country for at least 40 years, and it's not like doing extremely well. It's not like far ahead. So it's a combination of stuff, all of what you just said. But one thing that usually puts people ahead of the pack is their charismatism, how charismatic they are to be able, their charisma, that's the word, their charisma to have this idea, put it out there and stick by the idea is what makes them stand out in the primary process.
All right. Now, what's so confusing to me right now is when you look at these candidates, Hillary Clinton is a Democrat, Elizabeth Warren is a Democrat, but Bernie Sanders is not a registered Democrat.
No, he's
so
an
why? He's an independent.
Yeah.
So why is he? Why does he have the privilege to contest under the primaries in the Democratic primaries? Why?
So now, first of all, Hillary Clinton is out of the question.
Yes, I was just saying. I will always refer to her because, of course, she's a big figure in the Democratic Party. So,
which is knocking heads right now with Bernie Sanders with the comments she made this week or last week, I think.
Okay.
So you are an independent, but you can choose to run with the political party. They have that liberty to be able to apply.
Align with Republican or Democrat?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what is giving him an urge is that he is an independent with what is termed leftist idea, like radical progressive idea. So that gives him an urge over people like Warren, who are in the party, which, fun fact, back in the 90s, Elizabeth Warren was a registered Republican. Most people don't know that. People
she
like Elizabeth, she cross-carpeted for obvious reasons. She can tell you all about that. So once you are an independent, you have the liberty to run for either party and register with them and run for elections with them. Yeah, that's allowed. That's
Let's talk about the billionaire Bloomberg.
Yeah.
What's up with this guy?
Mike Bloomberg has invested more of his own money than anybody else in this process. So that tells you that he's still polling below 1%. That tells you that much money is not equals to vote. It's not equals to high numbers in the poll. But one thing he's done is consistently not attack his primary mates, which is key for the Democratic parties. But he has also said, even if he doesn't win the primaries, he's going to support whoever wins. That's a very difficult thing to come out of anybody's mouth who really want
but
to
he
be
was
in
a
the
Democrat, though, right?
He is a Democrat.
Was a Republican, like a moderate.
He's a moderate Democrat. Moderate Democrat, Mike Bloomberg.
So did he ever? I think he contested under the Republican Party.
Not in the best of my knowledge. He might have done that back in the 80s, but not in the recent history. When he was New York's mayor, he was a Democratic mayor. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much.
Now, tell me, is there any limit to how many candidates have to show up for the primaries?
No, there's no limit, so long as you meet qualifications, which is primary process. You have to be a United States born citizen.
Okay.
You have to be 35 years and older, and you have to have lived in the United States in the past 14 years. Wow. So those are the three basic things you have to meet. Then you are eligible to go forward. So and you file all of this at the level of the state. The only time where you go federal is when you've received up to $5,000 in campaign funds, or you've spent up to $5,000. That's when you have to file in. You have 15 days from that day to file in with the Federal Election Committee to say, hey, I have received finance campaign money up to this much money, and I've spent this much money, because at that point they start tracking your spending. Whispering into your campaign, what is their motive? This is when you start seeing people differentiating themselves and say, hey, I don't get money from the big donors, it's the people. Because the amount of money you get from the people translates into your support on the ground. That tells you that you are running for the people, you are doing what the people want. If you sit here and a random company like Chase gives you a check of $1 billion, or CVS, the pharmacy, gives you a check, those are people that have business interests. That begins to tell to the voters that, oh, this is where his money is coming from. So those are the people he's going to serve. So those are some of the little things that folks have to put together to be able to run for elections. So basic, 35 years old, US born citizen, must have lived in the United States in the last 14 years before we move on to the next step.
Great.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question.
Go
We've
ahead.
been focusing on the Democratic primaries. What about the Republicans? What's up? Are they just going to leave President Trump?
So, as of now, Donald Trump is a star of the Republican Party, so he
wow.
doesn't have any contestant. He
Why?
had one. Donald Trump bullied his way in 2015 to gain the nomination. People don't like to be ridiculed by him, so they are kind of
Scared.
They are kind of scared.
I was going to ask this question. At one point, I was thinking that I don't know how correct this is. I was thinking that when a candidate like it's 2 terms of 4 years each.
Yeah.
Like when you've done your first term, you just automatically qualify to run the next term without primaries. Is that the case?
No, it's not automatic. People
Okay.
can contest. People in your party can contest. Nobody is contesting, and historically, the president in the office automatically becomes the primary nominee. It's like an unwritten rule, but you can still contest it. Folks can get in there and contest you.
But why would folks not contest? At least for the sake of having done it, Yeah. So why the silence?
Again, historically speaking, folks that are already in the presidency and are running for the second term have an advantage that you coming in to run in the primary process don't. I'm actually surprised because a lot of people in the Republican parties are actually discontented with the president. So I was hoping that somebody would stand up and contest this. Somebody did. The former governor of the Carolinas did, but dropped out September 7, I think, Mark Sanford. He did. He tried to contest and but dropped. Why? The support for the current president within the Republican Party is high, so they don't see their chances. And certain states went ahead and tightened up their rules, making it impossible for people to come and do the primary process in that state. So it's kind of an indirect way to say, hey, chill out. Nobody's going to contest this president. He's our unanimous nominee before we
But for the sake of my political resume, I don't see why I shouldn't.
No, it's good to go in. That's like an unwritten rule. Certain things are not written. People just like understand it that this is the way it is. But you are allowed to run.
Okay, now since it's obvious that the Republican Party is strongly behind this president, now is standing impeachment trials in the midst of the Senate, Republicans. Of course, we know that the Senate is controlled by the Republicans. So do you think these guys would actually do what is right, like follow all the protocols and, investigate, the reasons why the president is being, impeached, was impeached by the Democratic Party? Do you think they're going to put sentiments aside and actually do what's right? Because like you said, we all know that this party, they're going to do anything to make sure the president remains in there. So
it's a no. Impeachment is a purely political game.
Okay.
You pick and choose. This morning I was reviewing a clip of Nancy Pelosi back in '98 screaming bloody murder because the rules were not fair. But fast forward 21 years later, it's like the Bible, right? I went to a wedding. I'm just going to digress for a minute where the pastor said that wedding was on the day where gay marriage was legalized in the United States. It became official. Anybody can marry who they want. And this pastor is a very conservative pastor, was preaching against this law got passed in this country. He said, no, that's not how God designed marriage. Marriage is between a man and a woman. Okay. In that same wedding, we go to reception. Oh, we don't drink alcohol around here. And I scream. I say, you just got done quoting from the Bible that a man should marry a woman. But do you know what else I know from the Bible? Jesus Christ turned water into alcohol and gave it to people to drink. So that's to tell you that the laws are there, the Constitution is there, but everybody picks and chooses what favors them at the time. I mean, there's Jerry Nadler, Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, a host of them, Maxine Waters. If they play a clip of them back in the 90s when they were defending Bill Clinton and them now under Trump, and vice versa, Lindsey Graham, they were the folks back in the 90s saying that Bill Clinton has got to go. You cannot do this in the White House and still be our president. So there's no fairness. It's not a fair game. You take advantage of what the Constitution is just guiding them. The Chief Justice is there to guide them, but they're taking advantage of every opportunity they get. The reason why this process is happening is because Mitch McConnell doesn't want to look like that person that crossed it out at the door and said, we're not going to do this. He wants to be able to go back to Kentucky to be like, yep, I brought it to the Senate floor. We debated it. We listened to the people and they voted. The senators are the jurors. They voted and they voted to keep the president or ousted the president. So we'll see what turns out. But to answer your question, there's no fair game in this.
Is that going to acquit him of the crime?
They could. I mean, if they don't get 2/3, they need around 67 senators to vote. But right now we have 47 senators, so we need 20 to cross.
Whoa.
And there's just 4 senators that are Republicans that are likely to cross and vote with Democrats. Likely, it's not for sure. And there are 2 Democratic senators that represent Republican district who might not vote with their party. So the chances of this gentleman being impeached is very low. The chances are slim.
Senior analyst of the American political systems, in especially the elections, Roderick Numia is his name. This is 2020's the 9th edition, reaching you live from Columbus, Ohio. Briefly and quickly, just tell me how long does the primaries take?
Different states. So Super Tuesday is in March, where I think 15 states are going to vote in the nomination process. After that, you can pretty much predict who is going to be the nomination for any party. We know that in the Republican Party is given. The current president is going to be the nominee. But in March, I think I will have to research the date and be accurate on that, where it's going to be Super Tuesday, where like 15 states who have majority of the delegates are going to go to the caucus and the nomination process and then decide who becomes the nominee for this for the Democrat in this primary process.
Last but intriguing question: if the party judges that the candidate who wins in the primaries is not better than the one who loses, can that candidate be deprived of his candidacy?
No, they cannot.
It happens in countries where democracy, is kind of
it cannot. No, if that candidate wins the nomination, they go to general election. I kind of read the laws. The only other thing, which is the reverse of that, what you're saying is the sole loser law. There's a law in 48 of the 50 states that prohibits anybody that ran in the primary process and did not become the nominee. It prohibits you from running as an independent. Wow. So Texas and South Dakota are only the 2 states that have an exception. So no, if you win the primary process, you go to the general election. It's the vote of the people. It's not the vote of the party.
It's the vote of the people and not the vote of the party. As a matter of fact, the people call their shots. The reason why democracy is described as government for the people, by the people, and of course of the people. 2020 race on APEX1 Radio. Thank you so much, Roderick.
You're welcome, Mr. Kanjo.
All right, and so our last stop will be in Georgia, Atlanta, where Albert Bartel will be joining us.
My God, look at that girl, the way she moving back, yo, I done lost. Wine poco, go down poco. Oh no, say wine poco, go down poco. Wine poco, go down poco. Oh no, say wine poco, go down poco. Charlie, EPQ, Joanna, I say make a shoot in my shot, I go banana. Do you like it? Up, down, oh shit, shy. Love you, oh baby, oh Maria, delight. Chimazu, you're the one of a kind. Your type is the type that I like. Caro, oh my God. Look at that girl, the way she moving back, yo, I done lost. Wine poco, go down poco. Oh no, say wine poco, go down poco. poco. Oh no no, say wine poco. Go down poco. Beauty, hello you. I really like how we communicate. I know you come from UK, me I come from Niger. I know you like Ghana vibe, so I come through with another one. Yeah, Jimazu, you're the one of a kind. Your type is the type that I like. Caro, yeah. Oh my God, look at that girl, the way she moving back. You, I done lost. Wine poco, go down poco. Oh no no, say wine poco, go down poco. Wine poco, go down poco. Oh no no, say wine poco, go down poco. Beauty, hello you.
Mixins and Foster.
Whether you originate from the north, south, west, or east, there is one thing that affects you directly. It is called politics. You may not like it, you may want to ignore it, you may think you are staying away from it. But wherever you go, politics looks at you directly in the face. 2020 Race educates you on your civic rights and responsibilities as a citizen of the United States of America. 2020 Race provides you with the freshest information on the upcoming election. 2020 Race is a radio show that brings candidates, voters, election experts, and journalists on the same platform to discuss issues pertaining to the electoral process. 2020 Race is a news, interviews, analysis, and announcements. 2020 Race is every Saturday, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. 2020 Race only on APEX1RADIO. Join us, be informed, and learn.
Okay, beautiful piece of music, the title I Love You by JB Piana. It's exactly 19 minutes past 3 here in the studio of Apex One Radio. Our last guest is joining us from the state of Georgia. He is Albert Batel Al. He is running for the U.S. Senate to represent that state. And at exactly 3:20 by the clock of our studio, let's bring him on the airwaves. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you for having me. We appreciate the opportunity to be in communication with you and have this communication be available about public policy as a candidate for United States Senator here in the state of Georgia.
All right, sir. Can you please do us a favor? Can you tell the public more about yourself? You know yourself more than we do, so we'll give you the privilege to introduce yourself to the public, please.
Very well. I am a certified mediator, and I mediate between communities and county government, state government, and federal government. I grew up in South Carolina in the deep country of the deep South. I grew up on a farm, cropping tobacco, picking cotton, corn, with livestock and animals. And then I went into the United States Air Force, military. I am a Vietnam-era veteran. I got out of the Air Force after 8 years and used my GI Bill and went back to school and majored in business. And I also majored in conflict management. And from then on, I have been resolving conflict with neighborhood, community, faith, and small business leaders. as a developmental consultant in the southeast region of Georgia. This January 12th, I had my 64th birthday, so I'm 64 years old. I am a baby boomer, and I love being a public servant. I love working, resolving issues between community and government. It is what I do for a living. It's how I make my living, and it is also a passion for my life.
Wow, I must confess, I like your stints. I like your records. Kudos to you, sir. But let me ask you this question: what actually inspired this political ambition? Why are you trying to become a senator?
It is clear now that southern states, in particular, will not be able to embrace the future without partnership with the federal government. A lot of funding comes to different states. The federal government is able to produce the kinds of initiatives, the kinds of funding initiatives, particularly in the area of health care, education, and transportation. Those kinds of major projects cannot be funded with just state dollars and state resources. It must be in partnership with the federal government. The accountable for public policy management that can manage that kind of effort is the office of a United States Senator.
Great. Thank you so much, sir. So you are an independent. You've decided to remain neutral. You don't want to pinch tense with the Democrats or the Republicans. Why did you make this decision? Why are you an independent? What are those policies? What are those things that you believe in that actually makes you stand out, that you just want to be, neutral?
Currently, the political partisanship designed to cause upset, to rile the emotions of people, to have issues be marketed to cause people to have upset, is not producing goodwill for the everyday citizens. The battle between the Democrats and the Republicans have become outrageous and unproductive for the United States of America. So in order to bring some neutral conversations where people can work across the aisle to do bipartisanship, to build consensus, one must now become an independent. It is no longer feasible to move our nation forward given the partisan bickering, the political marketing, and the upset of political marketing stakeholders. So that's why I'm running as an independent candidate for United States Senator here in the state of Georgia.
Thank you so much, sir. When we look at the state of Georgia is plagued by so many problems. When you look at the HIV rate in the state of Georgia is so high. We have a lot of people infested with disease. The education quality over there, it's not that up to standard. And there's so many things that needs urgent attention. So what are your plans and what are those issues that actually concerns you that you want to go in there and fix? And what are your plans to actually fix these problems?
The reason why those problems are so terrible in Georgia is because elected officials get elected for their own agenda. They get elected because there are lobbyists, special interest groups, and corporations that are only interested in the larger conversation for power and control. So we're at the bottom of the ladder in education. A lot of our economic standards have poverty in our neighborhoods and communities. Our race relations has not moved forward. Our transportation system is behind in the nation, and it's because of the political agenda that is based on power and control. It is disconnected from the community. What I plan to do is go to the 159 counties of Georgia and let people know that leadership from the grassroots level, leadership from neighborhood leaders, leadership from community leaders, leadership from faith leaders, and leadership from small business leaders is the only way that we can establish a future for our state and bring us up out of poverty, up out of backward education, resolve the issue of HIV and AIDS and health care. The only way to do that is with a groundswell of community-based approach where we can take back our government. And the way to do that is in the role of a United States Senator. That's going to be my message, my platform, and my intention.
Wow, thank you so much. In case you're just joining, it's 37 minutes down side 3, and it's still APEX1. We're still on to the show, 2020 race on APEX1 Radio, the station at the junction for your maximum satisfaction. And of course, we are talking to Mr. Albert Bertel, and this man is from Georgia, and he plans to be a senator representing Georgians. Let me ask you this question, sir. What makes your candidacy spectacular? What makes you different from other candidates?
What makes me a preferable candidate, what makes me an effective candidate is I'm interested in real communication rather than agenda-based political marketing. We are now in the communications age. We've had 4 ages. We had the agricultural age, where we defined our relationship to live, work, and play by our relationship with nature. Then we had the industrial and information age, where we use large smokestacks of iron and steel in production. Then we had the computer age, where we use information and computers. But now we're in the communications age, where we measure our effectiveness by how we communicate. Here in the Deep South, we did not have the large smokestacks of industry. We did not have the mainframe computers on every floor. So we were snatched out of the agricultural age and slammed into the communications age. I'm interested in using communication, the relationship between people, to take back the power of government from the political marketing stakeholders and put it back in the hands of people where it belongs.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bertel. Lastly, I want to ask about your campaign activities. I want you to dish out some information to the people, especially when they want to check you out. I'm pretty sure you have some website and social media handles. This is the right time to put it out there.
Absolutely. Bartell for Senate. That's BARTELL FOR Senate, SENATE. 2020. That's the website. That's the Facebook. We do roundtable discussions, development sessions, summits, and conferences to get input from the people. Please be in communication with us so that we can be in communication with you.
Thank you so much. We are so glad to have you on the show. And of course, we're definitely going to reach out to you some other time to be part of this again, okay?
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. Wish you good luck.
And we're just speaking there to Albert Bertel Al. He's running for U.S. Senate to represent the state of Georgia. And he was live this edition of 2020 race, reaching you live from Columbus, Ohio, in the United States of America. It's exactly 3:30, and it's time for us to start putting our things together to quit the stage, at least for today. Music then, when we come back, we'll run it off.
Yeah, oh my God, look at that girl, the way she moving back, yo, I done lost, wine poco, go down poco, oh no, say wine poco, go down poco, wine poco, go down poco, oh no, say wine poco, go down poco, Chale, EPQ, Joanna, I said say make I shoot him.
This is APEX1RADIO. This is 2020 race. We've come to the end of this edition of the show. We had all the candidates scheduled for today's edition of the show. There was Rim Sube, who is running for Ohio Senate District 2. We had Eric Connelly, who was right here in the studio of APEX1RADIO. Eric is running for the Ohio Senate District 16. We just running off with Albert Battelle, who is running for the U.S. Senate, representing the state of Georgia. Ayo, we're about to
yes, definitely. Everything that has a beginning will surely have an end. I want to say a big thank you to everybody that contributed to the show. My name is Ayo Akinuli. Call me Mike Busy Mike. Whichever way you want to call me, it's all about entertainment. I'll speak on the radio. Of course, you're on to APEX1RADIO, the station at the junction for your maximum satisfaction, the station that aspires to 2. Don't stop listening to us. I'm out. Thanks.
Roderick Numia handled our news and education slot on the show today. Gracie Boise was around to monitor the show. Ocon produced it from the studio of APEX1RADIO. Maxell was in Varsity, Switzerland, controlling us digitally. For presentation, we've been Ernest Kanjo and Ayo Akinoli. Asking you to join us again next week for yet another edition of the show. Same time, same station. And until we meet, it's bye for now. Do have a fantastic rest of the weekend.
Oh, shy, loving you, oh, baby, oh, Maria, delight. Chimazu, you're the one of a kind. Your type is the type that I like. Caro. Oh my God, look at that girl. The way she moving back, yo, I done lost. Wine poco, go down poco. Oh no, say wine poco, go down poco. Wine poco, go down poco. Oh no, say wine poco, go down poco. Beauty, hello you. I really like how we communicate. I know you come from UK, me I come from Niger. I know you like Ghana vibe, so I come through with another one. Yeah, Jimazu, you're the one of a kind. Your type is the type that I like. Caro.